Hello and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is, wherever you are, and welcome to Wilderness Lab's second annual DevCamp 2021. I am Bryan Costanich. I'm co-founder and CEO Wilderness Labs, and I am joined by a host of team members from Wilderness Labs, and we're super excited to bring this to you today. We've got a big show in store and a lot of announcements, a lot of fun stuff to talk about. And I'm really excited to have you on and listening, and let's take it away. All right. Thank you very much, Adrian. So DevCamp 2021, and this year's theme will be production IoT, and we will be looking at production IoT through the lens of our IoT accelerator, Klima. This is our first IoT reference kit, and we'll dive into what this means a little bit later. But it is available for pre-order today in our store, and is an awesome climate monitor and does a lot of things that Pro IoT does. Really excited to have this to look at various aspects of the Meadow platform via Klima. But first, I want to talk a little bit about the story of Wilderness Labs, because we were formed almost exactly 5 years ago, and we set out to, hardware is this place where things can be really challenging to build, and there was some fun stuff in the market. There was NetDuino, there was the micro framework, which has been renamed to Nano framework, and .NET was doing some interesting things, but it wasn't quite ready for prime time. It didn't quite do what we wanted it to do. We wanted a real modern experience of .NET on hardware, and so we set out to change that. In fact, our mission is to make building hardware as easy as mobile or web development. And for those of you who had been building hardware, you know that wasn't really the case. And we launched a Kickstarter. I think it was 3 years ago now today, but time flies. And thanks to you folks, we blew it out of the water. We 5x'd our goal, and you helped bring Meadow to life. Month after the Kickstarter, we released our first early beta, and it was very early. For those of you that were on it, you remember that. Deployment time took a long. Deployment was onerous, and hardly anything worked. But we had a start. We had mono on a microcontroller, and that was where it all began. And since then, we've really expanded and made a lot of progress on Meadow, which is now really a fantastic offering. And at the heart of it, for those that are unaware, Meadow runs full .NET on real embedded devices, on microcontrollers. And today it runs full .NET Standard 2.1, and we're in the process of moving that over to .NET 6, which will come out, which will port to this next year. It's got a really fantastic security story. A heavy security posture is a big part of our platform. And of course, it's designed to be managed out in the field. So as you build IoT and you deploy them by the thousands or hundreds of thousands, Meadow's this platform for you, because it enables you to manage those devices and update them and get information from them while they're out in the field. And so you can rest assured that your devices are not, that they're connected and alive. And really what this is production grade IoT. This is enterprise IoT for every developer, and ultimately it is just a better way to build hardware. Now, if we look at the Meadow stack as a whole, we see here at the base of it is Meadow OS, and Meadow OS is built around NuttX. NuttX's kernel. It's a micro real-time operating system that is a battle-tested kernel. It's POSIX compatible, so it looks like Linux, but it runs on embedded devices. And I think NuttX is 19, 20 years old right now, and it is battle-tested. It is a beautiful piece of engineering. And then on top of that, we have just absolutely gorgeous hardware API so that you have full access to the hardware, where .NET runtime, and some stuff on top, which we're going to talk about in a moment. The OS itself really feels like a modern, almost like a web OS, or almost like a mobile OS on hardware. So full networking stack with Wi-Fi and Ethernet, full SSL, which is, for those of you who are doing hardware elsewhere, that's a big deal. It's a big deal to have full SSL on a microcontroller. And of course, we've got a full Bluetooth low energy stack. We've recently added SQLite, so you can do local database access and data persistence, and even through SQLite.net, the ORM that we all use and love. Of course, there's a watchdog timer, so if the device crashes and it doesn't pet the dog, it will automatically reset. And then there's a fantastic persistent file system with strongly named directories and protocols to make sure that your data stays on the device through app updates, through OS updates. And so it really is its own OS, its own OS in its own right. And there is really no tool chain set up to get started with Meadow today. We support VS Code or Visual Studio on both Windows or Mac, and it's easy. And getting started is as easy as doing .NET New Meadow. And of course, Meadow Foundation, and this is really a pride and joy of us. Meadow Foundation is this massive open source library of peripheral drivers and industrial control algorithms and libraries to make hardware plug and play. So we have all these really beautiful hardware APIs, and then we have Meadow Foundation so you don't have to use them. So you can use hardware off the shelf. They have an API ready to go, and you can really build hardware in a plug and play way. And of course, our hardware, beautiful Meadow hardware modules. We have both a developer module for developing and for low run prototyping. We're going out to productizing up to 1,000 units. We've got a really fantastic piece of hardware there. It's got battery charging. It's got all the RAM and storage you want, BLE, Wi-Fi, and of course, now we have our F7 core compute module, which is this tiny little thing. And that's so you can go from low run production to high volume on the same hardware and the same code. So it really makes it easy. And while we've been doing this, in the meantime, IoT itself, embedded hardware, has gone really mainstream. And in fact, a revolution is in progress today. We went from this idea back in I think Bill Gates said this back in the 80s. He had this vision to put a computer on every desk and in every home. And we've gone from that to being able to put compute in nearly everything, everywhere, through the magic of modern microcontrollers. And the microcontroller, fun fact, the microcontroller on the Wilderness Labs board today has got the power about of a Pentium, plus a whole bunch of hardware and peripherals that the Pentium never even could have imagined having. So this is really, we've had a real revolution in hardware itself, and that was a gift from the mobile revolution, which brought us really amazing hardware. And now we really can put computing at the edge in just about everything. And in fact, this has spurred on this revolution in which now today embedded computing is the new thing. That is the new epoch. We went from mainframe computing and then desktop computing and the web hit, and everything was about web, and web turned into cloud, and mobile hit at the same time. And for the last 10 years, all we talked about really was mobile. Well, the next 10 years is really all about hardware, about embedded computing. And in fact, today, IoT is so big, it's already 3 times the size of mobile. And in just a few years, there will be 10 times as many non-mobile connected devices on the planet as human beings. So for every human on the planet, there will be 10 connected IoT devices, which is just almost too much to imagine. And in fact, nearly everyone today now is building IoT. If you look at companies of any of nearly any size now, folks are building and are going after IoT solutions and doing interesting things in the IoT market. And what that means to us as developers is that our skills as hardware engineers and embedded developers have really just shot through the roof in terms of demand. And while there's really a high demand overall for technology workers, that will at some point, that demand will sort of normalize and shrink back. But for the next 10, 15 years, that will not happen for embedded developers. Embedded developers will be in massive demand for the near future, the time being. And that is important because that directly affects our pocketbooks, which means that there's no better time than right now to skill up, to learn embedded development, to get your hardware on, and to embrace that market change. And what's interesting here is that if we look at the IoT market as a whole, we see that this is kind of a quiet revolution, because the hero experience that we see, the IoT that we generally interact with, smart thermostats and smart ovens and things like that, that is just absolutely the tip of the iceberg. That's consumer IoT. And in fact, the market itself, 90% of that is below water. That is commercial and industrial solutions where IoT is really making a huge difference every day in transportation and logistics and ag tech and retail. IoT is really changing the game there. And like I said, this is a revolution in quiet, because unlike the mobile revolution, where the hero experience was something that every one of us had in our hand, a mobile phone. And I remember when Steve Jobs got up and showed his iPhone off for the first time, and it was this beautiful piece of cinematic glass. That's not happening in IoT, because we don't actually get to see this revolution on a daily basis, but it is still absolutely happening, and it's very massive. And in fact, if we look at some of the solutions today that are being built with Meadow, our customers reflect exactly that. Just over across on the other side of Portland in Washington County, they're using Meadow they're building a solution to use Meadow to optimize water treatment, to reduce time and increase capacity. Over in the UK, we've got a customer building an energy meter that is designed at reducing energy usage and preventing failures in industrial equipment. And we've got a customer building CO2 monitoring systems so that we can all go back into public spaces in a safe way again. And even myself in my own backyard, I've been building a smart beehive in partnership with Portland urban beekeepers and Oregon State University to help to learn about and prevent colony collapse disorder, because we're losing our bees. IoT is really changing the world today. So that's all well and awesome. What's going on with Wilderness Labs next? Well, I've got some interesting and fun announcements today. First up, announcing Meadow Beta 6.0, and this just came out. And Meadow Beta 6.0 was a big release for us. And first of all, probably the biggest feature from this, the most long-awaited feature, full debugging on Meadow Hardware. And this is debugging in both Visual Studio for Windows, Visual Studio for Mac, and VS Code. And here to show this off is Adrian Stevens, everyone's favorite Canadian. And take it away, Adrian.
Thank you very much, Brian. So yes, do a quick demo of debugging on Meadow. So here I've got Visual Studio Pro running on Windows, and I've got a Meadow application. This is a familiar one. This is Blinky. This is the file new experience, and we can see that our light is running. But really exciting, we are debugging. So we get all those amazing features you get from the modern debugging experience. I'm going to add a breakpoint in my cycle colors method. And we're going to see it come on through. And look at that. We've hit the breakpoint. We can do all the wonderful things we expect to be able to do, like inspect values. We can, of course, step through. We can also step into methods. Let's do that here. I'm going to step into the show color method. I'll step into the show color method here. There we go. Keyboard commands. In. This is worth it. Okay, so notice here. So I'm going to step over the start pulse method. Light goes on. We're going to sleep for a second. It pulses. Light goes off. Again, full modern debugging experience. And of course, this is really great just for learning how to use Meadow. I love this example here. Here's the device object. This is the object that represents the Meadow board, Meadow hardware. It can zoom in, you can interrogate the properties, you can check the version numbers. And again, it's a really, really amazing way to deeply interrogate. Well, you guys know how to debug. You know the power of debugging. We have it on Meadow, a fantastic experience. And back to you, Bryan.
Thank you very much, Adrian. Thanks for that demo. I'm really excited for this. You know, we've been using console.writeline for a while, and console.writeline is fine if that's all you have. That's better than nothing. But man, it is really an experience to look at the hardware under a microscope while it's actually running. And I'm really excited about this. This was a feature long time in coming. And also hats off to the community. This was a mix of internal and community contributions on this. So thank you, everyone involved. It was very cool. Next up in the Beta 6.0 release feature pipeline is full device configuration at build time via YAML files. This is very exciting. Now, at build time, you can specify things like your device name, which is how it appears on the network, and then also your network configuration, including automatic network hot start. So at build time now, you can deploy your Wi-Fi credentials. Those get sucked up as soon as the app boots up, they get put in secure storage on the ESP32 coprocessor. The file gets removed, so the secrets are gone, and we can automatically go out to the network, get time from network servers, and automatically set the device time. And of course, there's other network settings as well in that configuration. And so I'm really excited about this. This really increases the overall boot time of Meadow because the coprocessor will start getting spun up and connecting to the network while the main processor is also booting up, and your application is starting to run. We also have huge upgrades to Test Suite. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with Test Suite is pretty awesome. It allows you to run XUnit-like tests on Meadow hardware. And with the latest version of Test Suite, it's now fully CI-able. You can fully bake it into your CI/CD pipeline, which means that as you're building production hardware, you can make sure that all of your tests, as you build new code, as you check in new code, you can automatically deploy tests to your device, have them run every time you build, and make sure that everything is working great. So you can make sure that your production IoT application is stable and have good test coverage. Now, the way this works is that you've got the tests run on the device, and we've got a host coordinator which will push the new tests down to the device. The device has a RESTful API for those tests, and you can talk to those directly, or you can use either the Test Suite CLI. We now have a full CLI for this, or the SDK to talk to that device and execute tests, get test run, get the validation back from those tests, whether or not they pass. And like I said, you can either run that from CLI if you're integrating into your CI/CD pipeline, or you can use the SDK as a library and call them directly programmatically. So you could write your own interfaces. You could write like a Maui app, for example, that coordinates and runs these tests. So that's really exciting. Test Suite is really awesome. We're integrating that into our own CI/CD pipeline, so that when we do new Meadow OS builds and we add new features, and we run regression tests, and we make sure that Meadow is stable. And along with that, we actually did some big upgrades to Maple.Server. And Maple.Server is our ultra lightweight RESTful web API server. And we upgraded routing. So now Maple has full routing privileges. It looks a lot like routing and ASP.NET Core. You can see the code there. We did that actually as part of our Maple.Server upgrades, and now part of our test suite upgrades. And now Maple.Server is really a first-class web API endpoint server, but still very light, very awesome. So also excited about that. Now on the hardware front, we have some exciting announcements. I'm super stoked to be able to announce this. First, our Meadow F7 V2s will be back in stock this next week and shipping. So I know a lot of you are waiting for, you pre-ordered, you're waiting for the new F7 V2 board, and that will be going out next week. I can't wait to get those into your hands. And all of the Meadow hardware designs have been open sourced. So you can now go and see exactly how those are built, get schematics for those designs, and use them in ways even that aren't, you can now use our hardware without Meadow OS. If you want to do MicroPython or whatever, you can do that because all those designs are open source. Or if you want to run embedded C on those devices, and all the JTAG information is there and whatnot. So I'm really excited about that. And on the open source front, we all come from open source backgrounds, and our goal is to open source as much of Meadow as we can, and still have a business, still be able to develop on Meadow and have a sustainable business. And I'm really excited. There's some more announcements here coming up around that later on in the deck. And then also on our core compute, on the core compute news front. This is our production module. It adds Ethernet, adds SD card. And as I mentioned before, it's really for high volume production. It's very, very small. It's about the size of a US quarter or a Canadian loonie. It's very, very tiny. And it will be available first quarter next year. So coming up very, very soon. And we've locked down pricing. You'll be able to get the core compute module as low as $30 at scale. So very excited about that. And the star of the show, our IoT accelerator, our first reference IoT kit, Klima, is now available for pre-order. Klima is just really a fantastic piece of IoT. We ran a developer survey, as we do every year. And this year we had an interesting learning. Almost 15% of you that wrote in and said you were building some sort of IoT, you were building a climate monitoring station, which was pretty funny because we were also building a climate monitoring station internally as a reference kit. Now, Klima is really awesome because it is the quintessential piece of IoT. It is battery and solar powered, meant to be living in the environment. It monitors your weather, temp, pressure, humidity, as well as air quality and Vox in the air, and also solar intensity via the solar panel. And then it takes that data, it wakes up, it takes those readings, and then it takes that data, pushes it up to the cloud, synchronizes with your favorite service, in our case, Open Weather Maps. And then it also has a BLE server on there, which enables you to connect to a companion Xamarin app, which we have built. So you can pull up your Xamarin app and connect and talk to the Meadow to the Klima device via this app, and everything is open source, and including the hardware schematics, the enclosure source, as well as STLs to print your own enclosure, the Meadow app and the Xamarin app. All of that are up in our Klima repo and ready for you to take a look at. And of course, you can pre-order yours today, and we'll be shipping those first units out in December. Make sure, if you want one of these, you better get in line. You better get in line now, because I guarantee we will sell out of the first batch very soon. In fact, we've been moving a lot of these, and I really do expect these to sell out. So if you want to get your hands on a Klima, go over to store.wildernesslabs.co and get in line. Now, that's all awesome. Really, really great, really fun announcements around what we've got out there today. I want to take a few minutes and just talk about what we've got going on that are going to, new things that are coming out soon. So first up, we've been making progress on Meadow Cloud. Meadow Cloud is our offering to be able to manage those devices out in the field. This is where OTA, over-the-air updates, are happening through. That's where security updates get pushed through. If you're deploying out to hundreds of thousands of devices, fleet management, being able to send out updates to some of those devices and do rollbacks, etc. That's all handled through Meadow Cloud. And of course, we'll also be shipping a feature for push messaging and MQTT, so you can reliably send a message to your device, or you can send an MQTT message directly. And then, of course, features for identity management. Make sure that your device has a private public key, that it has identity, and even being able to provision your app on modules directly from the factory. So if you're going out to production of thousands of devices and you want to get modules from the factory, already have your apps loaded in your configuration, that's also handled through Meadow Cloud. And of course, we're also working on automated crash reporting and logging, and we're really excited about this. And today, and also, I want to talk a little bit about the security stack of Meadow, which we're getting ready to release. So with Meadow, your devices can be in either in developer mode or production mode. And when you switch your device over into production mode, it's really a provisioning in which your private public key pair is created. Your private key on the device is stored securely so that it can't be accessed, but you can run things through it. You can encrypt and decrypt. And then also secure boot. So the ability to make sure that when you're deploying an application to the device, it is signed. It's signed with your key. And everything on the device, all storage is encrypted. This is very similar, in fact, almost the exact same feature that you may be familiar with Azure RTOS's security updates. The idea there that you can't sideload an application. This really looks like the iOS App Store, in which as a developer, you sign your application, you upload it to the cloud, and then it sends a push message to the device. The device says, oh, I have an update. Let's go download it. Let's reflash, reboot, and now we're running the new stuff. And that's part of OTA updates. We also have a number of trusted platform features on the device, including hardware crypto, true random number generation, and as I mentioned before, full SSL built in. And in this vein, I am really excited to welcome Alexi Christoforides, our head of Meadow OS, to come on and give us a early preview demo of OTA in action. Now, Alexi's going to show us how this is working today and give us a little demo of it happening. So welcome, Alexi. Really excited for this demo.
Thanks, Brian. Alexis here. I am part of the Meadow OS team, and the team has been working very hard to bring you full stack software updates for the Meadow device. Both the OS and the app will be updatable in 1.0. And we've been working on several components to make that work from OS to app. And I'm here to show you a little bit of that functionality. So we have a Meadow hooked in, and I'm just a Meadow developer who has our Blinky V1 project. If you have developed on Meadow, you're familiar with this. It's like the default new project template for the Meadow. So we have a few nice colors that we are blinking on the device, and we're going to deploy this. However, we have recently developed a much fancier version 2 of Blinky that is using these Wilderness Labs colors instead of the default colors. And we would love to get that update on the device. So we're going to observe the app having been pushed on the device, the version 1. Restarting with version 1. I like to work on terminal, but most of you know that you can use extensions for checking the output and deploying. As you can see, we have the old colors going on right now. And as soon as the device connects to the Wi-Fi network that we have here, it's going to pull a sample update that I have set up in a little local web server.
And while we're doing that, one thing you folks might notice, Alexi's working and deploying on Linux. So full Linux support for Meadow development, which is pretty fun.
Yeah, I would like to mention that anyone who is comfortable working in Linux or working on CLI, you do not have to use the you do not have to use extensions. If you want to just use VI, you want to use your own editor. Meadow has a very good interfaces on the terminal. As you can see, the update was downloaded. We had it pulled from device. The Meadow is resetting. And now it's blinking the much fancier colors of Blinky V2. And that's a short demo of our app updates coming to you soon. Thanks, Brian. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Alexi. That's really exciting. Seeing Meadow update over the air is a big step forward for us in Meadow Cloud, and also a big step forward for you folks being able to put devices out into production, because it's not really IoT if you can't maintain them in the field. And so I'm really excited to get a OTA shipped shipped out soon to you, and we'll ship it in stages so you can play with it and give it a test and help us stabilize it. It's very, very cool feature. Awesome. Well, some pretty cool announcements so far. A lot of really cool stuff that we've been working on. We got really great dev velocity. And I've got one more thing to show you today, something that I'm really excited about, something that's very, very huge. I want to introduce Meadow for Linux. Now, what this is a way to run and get all of the awesome Meadow Core APIs on Raspberry Pi, on Jetson Nano, other single board computers. We're bringing those Meadow APIs to that space. And what that means is that with those Meadow Core APIs, you also get access to the full catalog of Meadow Foundation. So you can run the same code on a microcontroller via our Meadow microcontroller modules as a Raspberry Pi, as a Jetson Nano, which is really, really fantastic. And Chris Tackey has done a ton of work to make this really easy with one-touch OS deployment so that you get everything that you need on a Raspberry Pi to run Meadow out of the box. And like some of our other stuff, this is fully open source. And in fact, we'd love community contributions here. We'd love for you to join us and hack on this and, help us improve this. And we've got Chris Tackey joining us to give us a demo, and he will also be giving us a session this afternoon and a little deeper dive into Meadow Linux. So, Mr. Tackey, thank you, and take it away.
Thanks, Brian. As Alexi had shown, we support Linux for doing your development, but we also support Linux as a target now. So this started as a skunkworks project that I was working on probably about a year ago. And we've got a much more in-depth session on this later today. But just as a highlight, you can see here we've got standard old Meadow app class. If you've been working with Meadow, you're already familiar with this. You've got an app base class, and it takes in a type. Typically, it would be the F7 micro here, but now we take in Meadow for Linux, and then it takes in a type parameter that is a pinout for your hardware, because our different target hardwares may have different pinouts. Once you've done this, everything else is very familiar. You get your device property. We create our I2C bus from that device. We can use a BME 280, which is a device driver that comes out of Meadow Foundation, pass in the bus. Then we're going to call start monitoring on that. Start monitoring simply reads from the BME. The BME is the same thing that is being used on Klima, provides us temperature, humidity, atmospheric pressure. So we're going to write that to the console once a second and loop. Now, if we take a look at this under Linux, I'm SSH'd into a Raspberry Pi sitting on my desk that has this BME 280 wired to it. For those who want proof, here we go. It is running Linux. And because we're running on Linux, even more fun than just running in the OS, we can actually run this inside of a container on Linux. So let me pull up and look at all of the containers that are running. Nothing is currently running on this device. I can now run from our Wilderness Labs Docker Hub repo a BME 280 sample. This is publicly available. Launch it. And you can see inside the container, it is now pulling from hardware that is connected to the device all of these conditions. You can see the Docker container launched, and it ran .NET app.dll, which is our Meadow application inside the OS. As I said, we've got a more full session later on today, but this is really exciting, really fun stuff, and it's going to unlock a whole ton of things. All of these Meadow Foundation drivers you can now use on a Raspberry Pi, Raspberry Pi 02, Jetson Nano, and even other devices. I'm looking forward to seeing what people do with this. Back to you, Bryan.
Very awesome. Thanks, Chris. That's so cool to see. You know, this really, what this does is this unlocks Meadow to run anywhere on anything, right? So when we set out to do this, every single hardware API we looked at, we sat down and we said, okay, this is how it works today in the world, but is this really the way that it should work? What is a better way? And we have, 20 plus years of .NET, of fundamental changes to the way that we develop and program in the world via .NET. And we took those learnings and we took all the modern pieces of .NET, all of the new fancy stuff that we can do in C# and F#, and we looked at that stuff and we said, how do we approach hardware APIs in a way that is 100% modern, right? Serial port, for example, works a certain way because some engineer back in 1972 who was working on hardware said, oh, I'm going to write this little API because I just need to expose this hardware, right? That's not necessarily the way that serial port should work. It's not necessarily the way that serial port is easy, to use. So we sat down and we really took a fine-tooth comb to all of those, and we questioned, why is this working this way today? Is this the best API? And we really, when I say that we built beautiful hardware APIs, we really do. They are groundbreaking. And now you can take those APIs and you can use them anywhere. And that's really a fantastic step forward for hardware technology, for hardware development. And this is Meadow Linux is fully open source today, and we'll be open sourcing our contracts and units and all the things that are the underpinnings of that, all of the interfaces and things very soon as well, so that you can see the entire stack is completely open source for you, and you can use that anywhere. And this is really an upgrade to some of the other APIs out there around .NET and hardware. You compare these two frameworks, and you'll see this is really a much more streamlined, much better way to build hardware. So I'm really excited about that. Really excited to have that out. Now, I also have one more thing, and this is also a very exciting thing. This is something that's near and dear to my heart, and it is called Chloroplast. And this comes out of years of working on documentation and publishing documentation and really wanting a better way to take markdown files, to take XML API documentation, and to be able to publish them in an easy way and have a workflow that's really friendly to folks who are writing documentation, who are creating content, and also pushing that out to the web. And so I'd like to introduce Chloroplast. Now, Chloroplast, for those that are unfamiliar, are organelles within plants that take the light from the sun and use that to combine CO2 and water split off the oxygen and make sugar. And this is really a metaphor for what chloroplast does, because chloroplast is used to take raw content and transform that into output that can be used elsewhere. It is very much like Jekyll, but built in .NET. It's got a full .NET backend, and it'll take Markdown and XML API files and output them as HTML. So this is really a fantastic solution to creating websites from content, from documentation. And it's pretty awesome. You hit the button and it'll output some static HTML, or you can run that as a self-hosted ASP.NET site. So you have full ASP.NET engine if you need to. So you can put in authentication, you can put in all the things that you want. You can make this dynamic site and still have all the loveliness of our templating engine and stuff. And it is fully Blazor, and the templates are they're so great, because you can stack your templates all the way down. They can be Markdown, they can be Blazor, they can be integrated. And this really is something that in fact, that we're using this for our upcoming doc site. We've been doc fooding this and building this so that we can have a first class, modern documentation site, and also fully open source. And so I'd like to introduce and bring to the stage my co-founder and best friend, Bryan Kim, to show us off some chloroplast.
Hey, everyone. Thanks. Glad to be here. Like I said, Bryan said I'm Bryan. Nice to meet you all. First thing you got to do to get chloroplast running is you got to install it. So if you come to the NuGet site, you can get the command there. You get that running. All right, and next thing you need to do to get the demo or the sample running is to clone the chloroplast repo, and inside there we have a sample site. So we go in there, and then it says simple as running chloroplast build. Awesome ASCII art there, so we're building the content. And now if we run host, we got it running. So you can see we got a basic sample site running here. This is the command line interface page. On the left, I have the source up. So you can see that it's similar to Jekyll, as Bryan mentioned. We got a YAML header. We got some Markdown that's been rendered to HTML there. If we check out the site config, it's pretty basic. I've got title, email, description, and some pointers to different areas in the file system that need to be there to get the site running. And to look at the templating, it is fully Razor enabled, so you can use your favorite templating there. And that's it. So that's all you need to get it running. It's super lightweight and easy to use. So we're really excited about this. And back to you, Bryan. Thanks.
Thank you very much, BK. Yeah, I'm really stoked about that. We went kind of fast through there, but like I said, this is fully Blazor templates. This is a really, really great way to build websites, and it's very similar to, like I said, Jekyll, which runs in GitHub pages, and we'd love to actually get that into GitHub at some point as well, because this is just a really fantastic way to build content. And this came out of 15 years of experience in building documentation and being frustrated by the lack of good documentation tools in .NET and the lack of a good static site generator. And so I'm really excited about this. This is obviously this isn't a Meadow specific feature at all. This is really a gift from Wilderness Labs to the .NET community, which we are a part of, which we've been a part of for many, many years. And I'm just really, I'm really excited to give this to the community. So I hope that you will all check it out and give it a shot and give it a try, and help us develop it. It's still early in its development. It's incredibly powerful today. The API doc stuff are still in kind of an alpha alpha phase, but the main markdown to HTML stuff is pretty stable and very rad. It's cool to see. It's cool to use like Blazor templates to process markdown files. It's so incredibly powerful. And as you get to start to play with the templating and whatnot, you'll see what I'm talking about there. So thank you, BK, for that demo. This is really a big DevCamp for us. Just running through the announcements today. A lot of stuff we talked about, full debugging support in all our IDEs, YAML configurations with network hot start, very cool, test suite, and Maple.Server upgrades. It's a real big lift in Meadow Foundation. And of course, we open sourced all of our hardware and announced our core compute pricing. And Klima IoT pre-orders are open, so definitely get in line there if you want one of those. And we saw an awesome OTA update demo from Alexi. Thank you for that. And then also we talked about our security stack, which, putting Meadow into production mode, which will be shipping very soon. And one of the coolest things that I think that we've ever announced since the beginning, Meadow for Linux. So you can really bring those Meadow APIs and Meadow platform everywhere. So you don't have to use some of the other stuff that's out there. You really get best in class, the absolutely best in the industry APIs for hardware, and get that in a completely open source way. And then, of course, our gift to all of our friends in the .NET community, Chloroplast, and everyone doing documentation out there. I think that you're going to love that. So thank you very much. Enjoy DevCamp 2021. We've got a lot of really awesome sessions today. And I will be back on this afternoon at 3:30 Pacific time to do a live Q&A. This is also live, by the way. We're live television, as we like to say. And up next, we have Jorge Ramirez doing Meadow from start to awesome. So thank you very much, and take it away, Jorge.